Hi, how are you?
Good.
Haven't seen you for a while.
No. Been staying out of school.
Getting out of, yeah, getting out for, that's good.
Yep.
It's nice to see you back.
Hello. Hiya. Get here early so you can get a good seat? So that's good news. I haven't been in a meeting with Dr. Shaw today, but I was talking to Mark and Rosemary about that whole quarantine thing, and they just talked about that, so.
That was great.
See?
And I got the afternoon off, so he was fine
Yeah,
with
it's good.
that.
It's, you know, half a day.
Yeah, he was like, okay. But I will say, he was happy he was able to come back tomorrow.
Yeah, I bet. So did you find that article?
I did. I just found it. I found it online, and then my sister said, I have the copy. I'll get it to you.
Seems like we're in tighter quarters today.
You are.
I just put the link on the Facebook page. If you want to share that link, I teamed up also the YouTube live stream.
You're doing better than a lot of districts as far as the COVID thing goes. Hey, Carol.
Hey, babe, how are you? Did you bring wedding pictures?
They're not back yet.
Oh.
I had a couple, but
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
And then, there we are. Oh, I always do it wrong. That's right.
this, I'll give you one of each here.
Wendy's going to say she's out there, but then Mark came and said she was
Okay.
out there.
Wait a minute, Carol, I got a couple more things for you, just because you're special.
Oh,
Here,
I thought it was just
runs
Mark.
like the wind. Oh, this is interesting.
Hey,
Hello.
how are ya?
Great, sorry I didn't return your call, I was in a meeting all day.
No, I know the feeling, believe me. That's something you're okay with?
Yes.
How are you?
Shadowed line clear, but yes. Sounds reasonable,
Well, I think it's
and I did fine.
very good fun.
There's some ideas of hiring him, how hard it is.
We really like that, I mean, she really wants to come here, so
That's
that's,
great.
pretty sure it's because of,
Well, we're amazing.
I know.
pretty sure it's because of the superintendent.
You're right, that's what I hear.
Could be the board, yeah, where do you hear that from?
Yes. One of us.
Got it.
It's kind of odd, isn't it?
Yeah, usually we have, I think maybe because it wasn't quite our.
How you doing? Surviving?
Yeah.
I'm good, how are you?
The year's just been so fun.
Yeah.
Really been enjoying it.
You want to compare notes?
Yeah, it's been fun. How about you? How are things?
It's wonderful.
Good.
Everything's wonderful.
Everything's wonderful.
Today was probably one of the craziest days I think I've ever had, just in terms of the whole thing after the other. I did that last resume of people who thought or something, so.
I was trying to calm down a little bit for you after last vote.
No, I think, you know, that's, I imagine we'll hear some of that tonight, but here's what it is. We're doing the right thing. Paid off. Yeah,
That's all we're doing. We're just doing the best we can.
that's all we can do.
And I think, yeah, I do that, because today is a perfect example, so under those different companies, we did up in school.
Right, right.
I'm happy about that.
I think there's a lot of them team that weren't doing the pool test.
Oh.
Like 8 of them, I think.
Oh, really? Dang, that's a lot.
Well, you know, I mean, well, there were some that were doing it, but were getting to school late, I guess, or
Oh,
Wednesday, so they weren't getting the test.
oh, darn it.
At least they got a bye this week.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
So that's pretty good stuff for a freshman. Must be exciting.
Oh, he's loving it. He's just having a great freshman year, so far, he's enjoying it.
Hey, guys. Here you go. Gotcha. Hey, David.
How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good. I'm sorry I responded so late this
Oh,
afternoon.
not a problem, it's a crazy day for everybody. I think.
Well, I was out, I was literally out and about.
Good. Joe, here you are.
Oh, sorry. I just find myself wherever I find myself.
Yeah, wherever you feel like sitting.
Gotcha.
I noticed you avoided sitting in the same desk with Carol, which is
You
good.
respond about something?
That was not my point.
Respond about something?
About something? No,
Oh, okay.
that was all information.
Okay. Yeah,
How are you,
I like
Paul?
the comment.
Staying busy? See trucks over there all the time. Hey, hey, Aaron. Good, how you doing?
Yeah, Russ got that, all of a sudden.
How are you?
It's nice and cool out there.
Oh, yes.
It really, it made it when I was listening to my Christmas music come in here, it felt a little bit.
In the spirit.
Debbie, no, I have.
You're one of those, huh?
I am one of
Is this ho,
those.
ho, ho, or just Thanksgiving?
Seriously.
Oh, Thanksgiving. It's too early for ho, ho, ho.
Well, like TBE.
Yeah, well, there's that too.
I'm not happy. Then it's not gonna go this afternoon.
But it's still not fully resolved, neither of you. I've still not fully resolved the problem with mask and spectacles.
Oh, it's terrible. Somebody's gotta come up with a self-fogging, defogging.
Doesn't perform the medical procedure.
All you see is last thing, you can see it.
She had given up on combination, and she has invested quite a lot of money in a pair of essentially goggles that were prescription. And that then allowed her to wear a face mask.
But everybody else does?
Well, protective shield, well, and so she can
Lucky you, when you can't wear your after that. Because you're going on the
not worth it.
But I'm glad we got it.
You can see, yeah.
Couldn't care less, yeah, I grumbled. Good luck, just, this is how you put.
Good job.
Have you tried to put fogging spray? You should actually work.
No, I haven't.
It's hard to
All right.
And then wash it off. You can't leave it on, and you can't see anything at all. I mean, I wouldn't know, I wouldn't know I was an electric razor, but you know, I mean,
But that's what I was told. It's like a doctor's
you know, anti-fogging sprays, or, you know, nothing new. I mean, they've been around for years. I've tried a couple of them over the years, and I have no recollection of theirs ever being satisfactory.
No.
No.
Even like, he ordered some offline that was $40 a bottle or something, and it still didn't.
It was just more expensive, not better. Yeah, right.
It's cold though.
No, it's one of those things we put up
When
with.
you're getting older and you find that I love it.
Yeah, I think you're fine.
Well, and the first thing I was
Anything you just can
Yeah.
support.
We've been very.
was to actually
You know, you might want to
Like a big old
make sure that
red
something
roll.
fit my nose. And it does greatly improve greatly. And I, that's a
My friends like,
instant improvement.
yeah, if I were to live, you don't get out like the nose. I can't.
No. If it comes out like this, your breath automatically goes up.
Hug right under.
I mean, you cheat, you're not wearing spectacles, so.
Not yet. Hello. I'm a gamer that might be your version today. Get the inside scoop in the classroom.
How horrible.
Sorry, I'm being inspired. I did. I came on my 40th. It was my first meeting. And my first day of work at my job. Town office.
First thing I noticed when
I already know it's
First thing I noticed when I was parking the car was that there weren't many.
No, true.
In that sense, we're back to normal.
I was just gonna say, I'm saying that.
I had no normal level of opinion until we
Very true. No, it is.
I take it this is normal.
No, that's true.
This looks like the
Okay, I'm
library.
having this conversation, no one is waiting to come in.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, get in.
You know, the library looks more like it looked when I was being a substitute.
No, we had what, like 30 or 40 people we were coming in last time.
All connected?
So far, so good.
Yeah, because it's not different now. Yeah.
That's right.
Until we decide something.
I'm supposed to be teaching graduate University of Augusta where I was before. And what they've tried to do is they've tried to amalgamate two classes, Lewiston, Rumford, neither of which got enough enrollment.
Right.
And the idea is that it will be half and half. It will be, I will go to one place, one place, another place, the other, because the others will Zoom. Given the kind of technology, that doesn't mean that every student is going to have to sit there with their own.
It doesn't, but I'll tell you the truth, it works better than we did. We used to do meetings where we would be in several locations, and everybody in one location still logged in themselves, so that everybody would have the full ratio. And everybody could see everybody's face. And, but you don't necessarily turn your audio.
What I was thinking as a compromise, I'm just checking before I talk to them, was that the actual face-to-face class won't have to have something in front of them. They'll have the big screen and a general mic. The people who are the other class that would maybe. Does that make sense as a compromise? Because, I don't think face-to-face to be effective any more than necessary by the fact that they're not in.
Well, what you'll notice is face-to-face will expand because everyone will be face-to-face on the Zoom.
Yeah.
But your plan would work.
I mean, I'm not, I'll do what they tell me, but I want to be able to say, I think, I may make the brain again before January.
So just so everyone knows, I'm about to unmute the owl, which means be careful what you say because it's about to be public.
I don't think they heard that.
Are you suggesting?
Who was?
He said he's gonna never
Put it
suggest.
on, be careful what you say. Okay. Just saying.
See, that might imply heavily.
That's what, I understand. It must be time, everybody's gone silent.
Yeah, I know it, I know it. See anybody coming in on the board? I know, it's amazing. Everybody just wants to go see the right things. Few minutes, 1 minute. Watch fun. Good evening, folks. Would you please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's board meeting. This is our board reorganization meeting, so as a result, it's my pleasure to introduce the meeting tonight to call the first item of business to the floor. Per policy BDA, we have the school reorganization policy, which talks about the protocol that has to be put in place in order to have elections of officers. And in your policy, a couple of years ago, was added a phrase that said that anybody that was interested in running for the chair had to notify the superintendent's office by a date specific. So this should make it fairly simple for the first item on the agenda. The only person who had submitted interest in that was Mr. Whitney, and so I will call for a motion to move that Mr. Whitney be board chair. Is there a motion?
I make a motion.
Ms. Herbeck makes a motion. Is there a second? Ms. Cooley, second. Since there are no other possible candidates, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Whitney. The rest of the meeting is yours. We're gonna retire.
There you go.
All right, thank you, Dr. Murphy. Next order of business is to elect a vice chair. Usually what we do is take nominations, and if there's more than one nomination, each person gets a chance to speak, and then we put it to a vote after that. So, are there any nominations for vice chairs? I'll make a nomination. I'd like to nominate Stephanie Erickson. Would you like to second that? Sarah? Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, then we can put that to vote. All in favor of Stephanie Erickson as vice chair? David?
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Unanimous? Congratulations, Stephanie. Next is to nominate a vice chair pro tempore. That's basically third in line. We did not have this last year because of the way things worked out, but should the chair or vice chair not be at a meeting, the vice chair pro tempore would be in charge of running the meeting and such. So, is there any nominations for that spot? David?
I nominate David.
Anybody second that?
I'll second.
Any other nominations for vice chair pro temp? I'll nominate Stephanie Herbeck.
I'll second.
Who's it second? I'm sorry.
Stephanie Erickson. Do both of you accept that? I should ask if you accept. Yes. Any other nominations for vice chair pro tempore? Either of you like to say anything before we vote?
As nominees, should we not vote?
No, you should.
You can vote.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. All right, all in favor of David Jones for vice chair pro tempore? Anyone? Yeah, Stephanie Herbeck. 4. And all in favor of Stephanie Herbeck for vice chair pro tempore?
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, right. It's- Is that Wendy? I can't tell. Hi, Wendy.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay. Did you vote, Wendy? I didn't see. Stephanie Herbeck? Okay.
Alright. Congratulations, Stephanie Herbeck. Okay, thank you. On to the agenda. See what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the minutes from the meetings held on August 23rd, 2021, and September 7th, 2021. Would you like to make a motion on the minutes?
I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
You? Second?
A second.
David Bartlett?
Tammy made the motion?
Yep, David Bartlett, second. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Citizens' comments. Anybody here tonight who would like to speak, who's not a board member? Okay, board member comments? David?
I'd just like to give a shout out to the boys Telstar Rebels football team for doing an outstanding job this year. I saw good attendance at the game Saturday, which was nice to see. And go Rebels championship.
Yeah, I would also like to give a quick shout out to the North Star crew, like Lindsay Smith and the students of North Star, and their community garden project. You've probably seen it in town next to the old Napas building. They're expanding that behind Napa. They've gotten a ton of grants. They found people to propose, do the grant proposals, and the students get on a Zoom and they really defend the project, and they've acquired a bunch of money from a bunch of different sources, and they built the beds. My daughter was a part of that a couple of weeks ago, which was really cool to see. And then, of course, they plant and harvest, and then all of the produce goes to local seniors. Jim and James, they did a food delivery service during COVID. So basically, they took that list and contacted them and to see what kind of stuff they wanted them to grow. And it's an ongoing thing for about 2 years now, and they're still expanding it. So it's a great program, and I just wanted to give a shout out to them.
Marcy?
I just want to say some exciting things are happening with the school PTA. So the middle school PTA has kind of merged into the Telstar PTA, so it covers the entire school. So there's a lot of excitement and positivity around that. The nominations for officers are still open until the 26th, Mark?
Yes.
So it's just really cool to be able to offer the support to all of our students and all of the teachers. So if anyone wants to be a member, it's also a great way to find out what's going on, because if your child is anything like my child, that's the only way I find out anything, so I highly recommend it.
As a new board member who didn't know anything about the elementary schools, I should say I visited both of them recently, and I only want to say that, first of all, of course, the principals were immensely welcoming and helpful, and that I thought it was really encouraging that students, teachers, everybody were glad to be there, really glad to be there, and enjoying themselves, which must be a tremendous part of education at any level, and perhaps especially at elementary level. A very good sign.
Any other board member comments? You? Chairman's report. I just have a couple things. First off, on a personal level, I just want to thank everybody for all your email and support over the last month. I didn't get a chance to respond to all of them, but I did receive them and I appreciate it. And thank you for working with the meetings and stuff. It's much appreciated, and definitely goes to show, it takes a community, and I appreciate it. So thank you for that. The only other thing I had was for committee assignments, and I think you got a copy tonight, and it was also emailed out. If you have any questions on that, just talk to David or I after the meeting, or email us. Basically, tried to get everybody their first or second choice, and tried to split it up as evenly as we could. So, again, if there's any questions on that, just find us after the meeting or shoot us an email. So, thank you. Committee reports. Do you have a reason now? Oh, yes. Our next board meeting is Monday, November 29th, here. Are the education for those meetings up to date, committee meetings?
They are, if it works for people.
Yeah. So I would just encourage you to look through those dates. We got Thursday, November 18th for the Education Committee, Facilities Committee, Wednesday, November 17th, Finance, Thursday, November 18th. And I'm sure we'll be emailing and going through those and making sure that works for everybody. So just, again, kind of like the committee assignments, just get back to us with feedback on those dates and stuff. So do we have a Region 9?
I have a report from Mr. Clinton. It's brief. He just wanted you to know that they plan on continuing to have their Halloween festivities in the evening over at Region 9. They started that, I believe, last year. It's like a trick or treat. You can find more information about that on the Region 9 website.
And yeah, it looks like most committees will try to meet before the next meeting, so we should have committee reports at that time. And we'll have to elect officers for those committees during the next meetings. So, Superintendent's report.
Thank you. I have a few items that I'd like to cover tonight before we get into the presentation. First of all, I want to thank Maggie and Stephanie for agreeing to be the delegate and alternate to the upcoming MSMA conference. And if you haven't signed up and you still are interested in doing that, please make sure Robin knows. I think there's still some time to do to get people signed up for that. If the two of you are all set this week registered here. And there is an item in your packet that just gives you a description of the conference and some of the things that are included in it. So again, if you're interested, just either email Robin or myself and we'll make sure you get taken care of. We have made the adjustment from Instant Alert through the old Honeywell system to ThrillShare using our new notification system. And it's a little bit easier to use because we have the capacity to just send a text message as opposed to having to do a text message and a voicemail message. And I know that the schools have been using those, and I've used it a couple of times myself, and it's pretty nice. It works pretty well. Hopefully the messages come through okay, and I think so far so good. We did have a couple of false starts the first couple of times we sent messages. If you didn't get one, you probably don't live on this planet, because it went to everybody. But we've since been able to kind of cull that list down. We're only getting it to the people who need to get it now. Also, just wanted to let people know, if for some reason you run into someone that's getting the messages that doesn't have anybody in the district, it's likely that they were reassigned a telephone from the company, and they just need to let us know, and we can make sure that that gets taken care of. In your packet, tonight, I actually included a hard copy of the percentages that you see we have involved in pool testing. That has made a huge difference for us this year. We have really reduced the number of students that are forced to quarantine as a result of the pool testing. And you know, we've had situations this year that would have caused us to close last year at this time. And I think just having the pool testing and the masking has certainly been paying off at this point. I had an opportunity to participate today in a conference call with Dr. Shah. And the one thing I did want to pass on is it seems like there's a very good chance that we may find out as early as the evening of November 3rd or possibly on November 4th about possible approval for a vaccination for students ages 5 to 11. So the state is already ramping up planning for that, and if that should go through, they're looking at the possibility of establishing clinics across the state, maybe across the street, as early as November 8th. So the idea is to try to get that option out to people as quickly as possible, with the hope that, you know, we can get as many people vaccinated as possible if their parents choose to have them go that route. So that's good news, and you'll see there that we're closing in on 50% in those schools of participation rate. And I gave you a number that was a little bit off earlier. We have been saying that it was 80% at Crescent Park. It's a little bit less than that, but not much less. I think the original calculation that was used to get to that 80% may have mistakenly included some of the staff members in there as well. But still, probably one of the highest percentages out there as far as participation rates go. So that's good, and we appreciate everybody's efforts to do that. Also in your packet, there's an item that talks about the disposal of a surplus snow machine. Last year we purchased a new snow machine. Those of you who are on the board remember it was put in the budget. And so we no longer need the one that we were having some issues with before. Not that it's not a very valuable and worthwhile purchase for somebody that might buy one. So we will be putting that out to bid. There will be a minimum bid of $1,500 on that. And that'll be advertised, and anybody that's interested in that will be able to put in a bid. It'll go to the person with the highest bid. Mark, Mr. Kennedy, I've asked Mr. Kennedy to talk to me. He and I have talked on several occasions about some misinformation on Facebook, which I know is hard to believe. But he's asked if you could just have a minute to kind of bring everybody up to speed. Mark?
Thank you. About 2 weeks ago, there was a post put up on Facebook, and it was talking about a mom who was upset about her child being sent home from school for a dress code violation because her child's wearing flannel and Carhartts to school. And it was specifically pointed out it was Bethel High School. And so at that time, we started getting a lot of Facebook messages, not such nice ones, and emails to the school saying, "What are you doing?" It was a whole great big rant. So I looked into it and found out that, in fact, it was Bethel High School in Bethel, Washington State, not our high school, which is called Telstar High School. But just to go through and to realize that everything on social media is not as it may seem, and be very careful about jumping to conclusions and jumping on the bandwagon and forwarding it to people, threatening to call WGME 13 News and have them come up and do an article, and so on and so forth. Took a little bit of investigating and found out that it's on the other side of the country. It is definitely not us. If that was our dress code, we'd be at 100% affirmation all the time. The kids would love it. We would never send anyone home for that. But I just wanted to share with everybody once and for all, so if you do hear about that, or it was about 2 weeks ago, it has been out there and gone round and round and shared and reshared all across the country. But it is not us, and was never us, and would not be us for that purpose. So just want to make sure that everyone's aware and you hear it now, and in case it does come up again, so you have the right information. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. So everybody that has Carhartt on tonight, you're okay? You don't need to go. Since the last meeting, we've had some appointments and so on, so I'd like to go through those. We've appointed Matt LeBoy as an Ed Tech 1 at CPS. You might know Matt was one of our monitors last year at Crescent Park that we were able to fill with some of our COVID money, and he has applied for an open position, and he's doing a great job. We're very happy to get him. Also, Payson Priola has been hired as an Ed Tech 1 at CPS. And basically, an Ed Tech 1 doesn't do specific planning to work with students, but they're an assistant that can do other things in the classrooms. Brian Penley is a new custodian at Crescent Park. Brian actually did work for us at one time here in this building. He left the district and he has come home. So it's good to have him back, and he is at Crescent Park. And Warren Thurston, some of you may know Warren. Warren's a Telstar grad, and we're very excited to say that he is going to be a custodian here at Telstar, and he's going to be starting in the next couple of weeks. So that's good. We also have had some resignations. We had Deborah Toothaker, who was a CPS special education teacher, and Brittany Sutherland, who was a high school English teacher. Both were new, who started the district this year, and it was not a good fit for either one of them, and decisions have been made, and we have been able to find suitable replacements for that, and we're working on for the English position, and we're also working on the special ed position, and that is almost finalized if it hasn't been already. I just don't know whether or not anything has been issued, but we'll connect later. But anyway, those are out there, and that's okay. Also, we have some agenda items tonight for some new staff that we're recommending for approval. You just had a chance hopefully to see that, and those will be later in the agenda. We've had some Schedule B appointments since the last meeting. Telstar High School Interact Club Advisor, Alec Newell. Telstar Middle School Girls Soccer Coach, Jen Aldrich. Assistant Field Hockey Coach, Haley Barter. Yearbook, Susan Gordon. Crescent Park School Soccer Coaches, Tara Ingraham and Crystal Gould. Yearbook, Susan Gordon. Student Council, Crystal Gould. Woodstock School Yearbook, Linda Yates. Student Council, Andrea Howe. And we also did receive some funding for an outing club advisor. You might recall that we received that through a grant that Scott Underhill wrote here at Telstar. So that's currently open, and we'll be recommending a candidate for that at the next meeting. And we're going to bring that to the Personnel Committee too, because technically you'll have to approve adding that to Schedule B, but it won't require any district funds this year because we have it covered through the grant. So we'll bring that to you next time around. Also at the middle school level, boys basketball, Tim O'Connor. Middle school assistant basketball, Steve Pelletier. And high school girls basketball, Brian Mills will be returning again this year. Later on, we also have another agenda item that has some stipend positions that we'll be recommending as well. So that concludes the appointments and resignations and so on. At this time, I'm very pleased to introduce Lindsay Lecce and Jenny Smith. And you might recall, if you were on the board last year, that Lindsay did a presentation, and I did send a copy of that video out to people. I hope you had a chance to look at it. There's been some great things happening with regard to resiliency in this district over the past couple of years, and these folks have been very much involved in that. We mentioned, I think, at the last board meeting, regular board meeting, that we had received a substantial grant, which is going to help fund some support for that. We saw the beginning of that recently with some workshop days and some follow-up presentations that took place. Very motivated staff in terms of follow-up on that. I had a chance to sit in on one of the presentations that was made last week, and it was evident that there's just a lot of excitement about this. And so, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lindsay and Jenny, and they'll bring you up to speed with some of the great things happening with resiliency.
Thank you. We're gonna, make our way here. Tricky to, what's the best position here?
Wherever you would like to be.
To not have people with their backs to us, maybe? To be able to see both things? Does this work for you guys? Everybody good? Okay. So as David said, I'm Lindsay Lecce. I'm the Dean of Students here at the middle school, and fortunately, when I stepped into the Dean role, it was the first year of us being a pilot school for the Resiliency Project. So.
And I'm Jenny Smith. Currently, I'm the social worker at Crescent Park Elementary School, but for the last 3 years, I was the behavioral health liaison for the Resiliency Project through Oxford County Mental Health, funded by the John T. Glenn Foundation. So, what have we been up to? So Lindsay did some of the Loom, or Dr. Murphy did, and that gives a lot of the history. We're going to quickly bring you through that tonight and then get you right up to speed with all of the exciting things that are happening. So for the past 3 years, we have been working with the staff and students here on building resiliency in the students and building some trauma-informed lenses and language and practices among our faculty. It started out, we were just going to pinpoint the middle school and the high school, and it quickly caught on to the elementary schools. And so in varying degrees for the last 3 years, the elementary schools have been on board, and really the middle school and high school were the pilot project. And so what that means is that we really specifically focused on giving the staff professional development to start building a toolbox for all of the things that they were being asked to do above and beyond teaching. They come knowing that, they got all of that. What we did was give them some terms and some language for what they were seeing in their students over the last few years, and to be able to make some sense of behaviors, and then started building a framework for how to best and most efficiently and effectively help all of those students. And so we targeted professional development for staff, and our mantra was sort of, if it's good for kids, it's good for adults too. And so, hoping for the trickle-down effect, we gave them tools, hoping it would trickle down to students. Okay.
Sorry.
Next slide.
Here we go.
So we're here talking to you today 4 years later, because what we found was some really awesome stuff. So one of the first things we did is, if anybody has ever been involved in any sort of grant work, is you have to keep all kinds of data to prove what you're doing is worth the money that they're giving you. So we started right away collecting data. The first year it was kind of rough. We were doing it ourselves through the Oxford County Resiliency Project, and it wasn't super great. By year 2, we got some professionals on board through the Behavioral Health Improvement Initiative through Keene State College. And they are super data geeky people who are collecting all of the data for us. One of those measures is our school climate measure that's completed by students, staff, and parent caregivers. And so year 1 was kind of our baseline. Year 2 was given in the middle of a pandemic. And as timing was such, our year 2 survey went out. It was either our first or second time we had come back from just going remote for 3 days. So that sets a little context for you. And we say that because our results for year 2 in our climate survey were super impressive. What we found out after doing some work, after doing all this work, is we had more people actually do the survey. So that was nice because we actually got a nice sample size of what parent and caregiver, mostly the parent and caregiver one, increased in sample size. We kind of have a captive audience for our students and our faculty. So what we found from them is that they felt more comfortable talking to teachers than they had the previous year, which is a little ironic because they weren't able to come into the buildings, but they felt more comfortable talking with staff about their students. We also found out through the staff survey that teachers felt more connected to each other than the year before. Again, this was the year of Zoom and no one was really together, but they felt more connected. So that was great. And then really what brought us to tears every time we looked at the student climate surveys is what we heard from our students in year 2 is they felt safer at school in the middle of the pandemic. They felt more hopeful for the future. They saw themselves more as helpers to others. And then the best one, and like where the rubber hit the road for us, is they felt more understood by the grown-ups in their buildings and that they could share their feelings with them on a more real basis. So we're here because, and we're keeping this going because we're seeing the fruit of our labors. Our kids are telling us really good stuff and our staff are telling us really good stuff.
Okay, so that brings us to this year, and probably like, this is year 4, but take COVID, the spring and then all of last year, combine that into 1 year. We really think of this as our 3rd year. And if you know anything about gardening, you know that there's 3 years to developing a perennial garden. First year is the weep year, where it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna work. And then there's the 2nd year, which is the creep year, where you set your roots. So we've been doing that. The 3rd year is the leap year, and that's right now. That's where we are seeing exponential growth and excitement and enthusiasm, and we're ready to actually even start planting some more seeds. And this year's work is really exciting because it's K-12, where all of our staff are actually going to be on the same page, which is really rare in the district, receiving the same professional development, implementing many of the same practices and procedures, and we'll be creating resilience intervention teams. So it's another acronym for you, not RTI, but RIT. There will be a test at the end of this year with all the acronyms. We'll have to have a trivia night with just acronyms, okay? Be a good fundraiser. So resilience intervention teams. What that means is our staff will be guided through a process we've already begun to identify students who are not necessarily, we're not screening them for ACEs, because we all have them, but thinking about who needs a little bit of boost and adding to their resilience, because that's what's going to help them to face some of those ACEs and the challenges that they'll come across. And we want them to be able to persevere through those and to have that support that maybe they're not being caught in other ways. So at the K-5 level, teachers will be working collaboratively together. Think of like an action research project where they will have, instead of targeted students, because they each have their own set of kiddos, they will be focusing on a specific behavior or need, and then they'll be able to reflect, implement, test it out, and then use each other as backboards to sounding boards to keep moving through that work with kids who have similar needs. And so there's like a safety in that, right? And then our 6-12 staff, they actually share kids, so they will be working together to hone in on and basically play triage of who needs this, these 2 or 3 kiddos that we can really work and implement these strategies to gain, strengthen those roots again. right? To feel like what we're doing, these practices, can work for other kids. And if you tag team that, so that approach with our resilience intervention teams, we have a professional development outside resource that is coming in, and his name is Dave Stewart Jr. You can, as he likes to say, he's really bad at naming things. His website is davestewartjr.com. He is, so he's come in, he's a student motivation and engagement expert. What he does is he curates all the research and the philosophy, and he puts it out for teachers to use and implement in real time, in real world applicable ways. What gives him credibility for us is that he is a practicing teacher. And we're really lucky that he's written a book. He has a really popular blog among the education geeks. And he works with a few schools throughout the year, every year, and we're one of them this year. So he came and visited the district and kicked off this whole initiative for this year with a half-day session. And as Dr. Murphy said, after every professional development we do, we get feedback from our staff. We have a sort of shared practice that we've been doing since the beginning. And just like, I don't know, through the roof, over the charts of enthusiasm from our teachers on a Friday of a long weekend, before a long weekend, saying, wow, this is really great, we're excited. So, for teachers who are sitting in a workshop all day, that's all you need to know that we're on the right track. He will be working with us. His major, I guess, thing is that he believes in 5 key beliefs. And so he'll be teaching our staff all about those 5 key beliefs. We started with credibility in October, and then it's not just like, oh, here's all the philosophy and read all this stuff about it, but he says, now try this, and do this one thing. And our teachers left there being like, oh, I want to do all of them. He's like, no, really, just try one of them and see how that goes. So he's giving those specific strategies that our teachers the next month will work together to implement. This is how it goes back and forth, like tennis, table tennis, with the resilience intervention teams. So Dave teaches, they learn, they get strategies, they implement them, then they collaborate together. How did that go? What can we do differently? And then they learn some more, they implement. So that's what we're going to be doing all year. And we're really excited about it. Let's see what else I have. Yeah, so that's shared collaboration. Again, like bringing our teachers together when it can be really easy to kind of just hide in your corner. On top of that, we also have strong resilience team membership. We have 2 resilience teams that I'm happy to say are, the board supports through PLCs. So thank you very much, because without that, we wouldn't be able to continue some of this work. But K5 has a resilience team, and so that's Crescent Park and Woodstock working together. And then our 612, we also have a resilience team, and we will be spending time together this year. Again, everybody getting on the same page, sharing some additional training through the Pear Institute on mental health topics. And so this is like that leap year. Instead of building the plane while we're flying it and trying to scramble and create our own PD, we're actually able to spend time thinking about next year's plan, which, like, it's only October, and we've got ideas for next year. So we're really excited about that. All of these outside resources, however, they come at a cost.
So how have we been able to do this so far? So if you were here 3 years ago, I think Stephanie Lang from Howard County Mental Health Team to talk to you about the initial pilot project funded through the John T. Gorman Foundation. So that was about a $200,000 grant that was given to start and build this work for the first 2.5 years. And they're continuing to fund some of the work. We'll talk about that. We also, some of the funding is coming from the Lerner Foundation, as well as the district in supporting PLCs and staff time. So we do get 1 staff meeting a month, which is pretty precious time where staff have to attend, where we get to do these professional developments for them. So time is like the highest commodity, I feel like, out of all of what we've gotten. So what did we use that money for? How did it get spent? Well, so we did hire the data team, the Gorman Foundation hired the data team. So we have our folks from the Behavioral Health Improvement Initiative out of Keene State College. And what the Gorman Foundation did was extend they had some leftover funds from the original project, and they are super interested in the work that's happening here right now. So they extended the grant funding and allowed them to use up the rest of the funds, so we get them for another year. And so we'll have lovely data to talk to you about maybe at the end of this year around what measures got moved forward this year as far as our climate surveys and some other data that they collect for us. And paper resources, so staff got books, we got tools for teachers, we've got, other just basic necessities that we needed to have paid for, was paid for through that grant. Like things as simple as laminating posters of the zones and regulations that hang up in every classroom in the entire district. They did pay for a retreat for our first summer, which actually gave us a little time to do some data analysis with BHII. Also gave us time to take a tiny little bit of a break from building the plane while we were flying it and let us just build the plane a little bit. And so we had time to plan for the next school year. And then they did pay for some of our time to go to that retreat. We also went to some other trainings around resilience, and we were able to go to a training with the guy who wrote the book, as well as had a movie, The Paper Tiger. Yes, who is kind of the grandfather of trauma-informed practices in schools, which is why they made the movie about him and not us maybe. And then the Gorman Foundation was eager, I would say, to help fund Dave Stewart Jr. coming to Maine. I said, Lindsay, let's just ask. And they were like, yeah, we'll fund that. So we'll fund your data team and we'll fund your PD for the year. And we were like, thank you very much. So they're a large funder. We also, the Learner Foundation is funding some of those mental health trainings for our resilience teams to then hopefully kick off next year. And then, of course, the district helps with time, and then the PLCs for the resilience teams.
Yep. That's fun. So how do we keep it going, right? Because we want this garden to not only just produce some good stuff here, but how can we sort of spread the love so that all students, this impact reaches new teachers as they come on, and students all the way through K-12, and not just, when a student gets to 6th grade because we stopped for work, now what? In order, sustainable practices, we need to overcrop in some ways, and we need to amend the soil in others. Yes, there's a theme here. It's garden. That's what our grow your goal is, the middle school theme this year. So I'm going for it, baby. Grants are really great, and they are what help you get started. But grants cannot sustain the work. And we, like I've said, we discovered sort of the more you learn, the more you find out you have more to learn. And we have a lot of things that we still want to continue doing. There's more professional development we'd like, ways that we can use staff differently, more data that we need to collect, even just like the structure of how we implement things, and materials that we need. We've got a lot of things going for us. We have staff and administrators who absolutely value this work, and that is probably one of the biggest hurdles in order to keep something sustainable. And we have climate surveys, right? Jenny talked about. They indicate that our other stakeholders, our students and our caregivers, are being impacted in positive ways through this work. And one thing that we are hoping is that we want the board to understand that this work's value can only continue if we have your support. And when you are setting long-term goals and financial decisions, it truly, I feel, it would be a disservice to our community if we could not continue supporting this resilience movement, basically what we're doing. And, you know, we don't want to get into the thick of everything here, but it's really important that you know what our staff are going to be diving really deep into this year and what your students are going to be experiencing. If you are a caregiver, please complete the climate survey when it is sent to you. If you would like us to come to any committee meetings to talk more about specific details in the education committee, what are the actual things you're doing, we'd love to do that. And I think at this point, we'll open to questions if you have any. If none, that's okay too.
Just a couple of things. Lindsay has referred to PLCs. Those are professional learning communities. We actually have funding in our budget that was a carryover from our efforts that we were doing back when we had the TIF grant, which we retained. So that enables groups of teachers to be able to come up with proposals that allows them to focus on certain topics. And I think the resiliency people have put that to good use. Also, I'm pleased to announce tonight, Lindsay and Jenny don't even know this, but we have received approval from one of our COVID grants that we built in some money to help support resiliency over the next couple of years. And so we will have that funding available as well. And we've used some of it to purchase some items at the elementary level that had been requested earlier. So we have that going for us as well. And of course, you know, I think the board has a long-standing tradition of looking ahead and trying to build programs. We've done that with North Star, we've done that with the TFA, we've done it with Mahoosic Arts. And I think this is the same kind of thing, you know, if we can begin to ramp up and just recognize, I think, the importance of this as we build a budget, that will be helpful. I think last year when the kids came back after being out for a number of months, everybody noticed a change in just the way kids reacted to school. And part of that certainly, I think, had to do with the fact that they had missed their friends and missed being in school. And I think another part of it probably also had to do with some of the things that have come out of the resiliency efforts. So what we saw last year, and Mr. Elliott's here tonight, and Ms. Lecce, both as deans, we saw a real drop-off in terms of behavioral problems. We saw kids who wanted to be here. We saw kids who were committed to trying to make things better for everybody. And, you know, I think as superintendent, that part of that has to do with the efforts that have been made in the trenches with resiliency. And to see it happening as a continued basis, K-12, is going to be very, very exciting. So we do have some funding coming through grants, and we'll also be looking at talking with the Finance Committee about trying to build something into the budget as we continue to move forward. The other thing that that had come up was the question about ed techs, because we currently cannot really, ed techs are not required to go to staff meetings.
Yeah.
And so if they do attend, they have to attend pretty much on their own, which is a challenge to some people. So we will be able to use some of that grant money to offset the cost of paying our ed techs who do want to attend and be part of these sessions to be able to do that in the future. So that's all good news. I would just like to say too that this is one of those efforts that is going to pay off long term, and you'll see it really as a result of so many other things that we do. Last year, the Education Committee really focused on wanting to make sure that resiliency was at the top of the list. And so the other part of this grant money that we have available is to be able to fund a resiliency coordinator. And so we started talking about that last year, and now that we have those funds, we'll continue that conversation. And, you know, it won't be a full-time position or anything like that, but just someone to help coordinate things on a stipended level. So I want to thank you folks for the hard work you're doing, and everybody else too. And yeah, I think just having a chance to watch Dave Stewart Jr. Engage with the staff was pretty impressive.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, thanks. That concludes the superintendent's report. I will just say that the special ed position is one that I mentioned that we were in the process of filling, will be on the agenda tonight, so we're good.
Any old or new business? Adjustments to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go on to number 3. See what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the district fiscal year 22 emergency plans.
So, we sent these out a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure you all had a chance to read through the 1,200 pages of information and charts that were provided. Actually, Mr. Jones contacted me today and said, this is all wonderful, but you know, we have some kind of an executive summary, which is really a good point. But So I did send out some things later this afternoon. I don't know if you all had a chance to see them, but they're just one-page summaries that we have posted in the classroom. I think the second one was the glitzy one that you were talking about, perhaps. Yeah. And the first one is just like a quick hit list of what do we do in the event of some kind of a crisis. And so we have that information in a one-pager, which you now have via email. But back when we first started developing these plans, we did it with Scott Parker, and Scott was an emergency consultant, and we put, tons of time and effort into developing those. And then every time there's a drill, the administrators sit down and review everything that's happened during the course of that drill and find out if there's anything that needs to be tweaked. Last year, we didn't do an awful lot of deep dive drills. We pretty much went back to just doing our old fire drills because of the COVID. So there weren't a lot of changes last year. So pretty much the plans that you see today that are being presented tonight are the same plans that were approved a couple of years ago, with the exception of the front end of it, which just lists different members of the committee because we've had some transitions and so on. But we will see if we can put together some kind of just a brief administrative or, executive summary in the future, which would probably be helpful. So it was good advice.
Maybe I can make a motion on the emergency plans. David?
Make a motion that we accept the district's FY '22 emergency plan.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Number 4, see what action the board wishes to take regarding awarding the snow plowing bid for the 2021-2022 school year.
So typically, if this was something that was happening during the school year, we would have had this go to a facilities committee ahead of time, but it always happens at the front end, so it seldom gets to that point. We have one contractor in the area who's big enough to be able to provide these services, and that's Cross Excavation. We've had very good luck with them. They've really treated us well. Mr. Deegan's had a chance to work with them, for many years. We're comfortable with the proposal that they've made. They have gone up a little bit this year in a couple of areas. I'm sure part of that has to do with the increased cost of fuel and so on. But we've been satisfied with them, and we would recommend your approval. You had a chance. That was in your packet, so hopefully you had a chance to look at it.
Maybe I can make a motion on that. David?
Make a motion that we accept the snow plowing bid from Cross Excavation for the year 2021-22 school year.
Second. Wendy? Further discussion, questions on the snow plowing bid? Seeing none, all in favor? Number 5, see what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent's nomination of a Telstar High School science teacher to a first probationary contract for 2021-2022 school year.
So I'm pleased to let you know that we had a very, we think a great candidate for this position, Christy Hanscom. Christy is the Telstar graduate, recent graduate of the USM, strong science background, and excited to come back to her hometown and be a science teacher. And I did bring her on board as a long-term substitute, having hopefully formal board approval tonight. And she started, and she's still here, doing a good job. So we're happy to have her here. Mr. Kenny and his interview team had a chance to meet with her and strongly recommend approval. Question was asked earlier today. Question was asked earlier today about what kind of support do we provide for our new teachers. We do have a mentoring program in place, so they will have another teacher working with them as a mentor. They get observed a little bit more frequently than continuing contract teachers, so the building administrators will be being in close touch with those folks. And then they do have to go through recertification every 3 years with the licensing committee. And so they have to submit a formal plan and that gets reviewed and evaluated, and they have conversations around what steps need to be taken and so on. So there are measures in place to help support new teachers. And, you know, we've known Christy, those of us who have been in the district for a while. She is a very motivated, I think, high-end individual, and we think she'll be a great teacher.
Would you like to make a motion on the nomination?
Make a motion to accept the superintendent's nomination of a Telstar High School science teacher for the first probationary contract for 21-22.
I'll second it.
Cheryl? Any further discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Number 6, see what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent's nomination of a Telstar High School English teacher to a first probationary contract for the 2021-2022 school year.
So as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we had a high school teacher that we had hired this year, and that did not work out, and she decided that she would resign at the beginning of the year, and we have since been very fortunate to recommend Michelle Bouchard. Michelle is actually an ed tech in our building, but has been a high school English teacher in the past. She moved here from another district and took on an ed tech role. And then when this opened up, she decided that she would interview for the position, so she knows the kids, she knows the school, she knows the routine. And, you know, we feel very fortunate that we were able to find somebody from within that we can bring right to the table and have step into that role. And I had a chance to talk to Michelle, and she's very excited about it.
Motion?
I'll make a motion.
To accept?
Absolutely.
Second?
I'll second it.
Go to Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Number 7, see what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent nomination of a special education teacher to a first probationary contract for 2021-2022 school year.
Ms. Cordero and her interview team interviewed 2 candidates for this position, and the recommendation is Kevin Colby. Again, Kevin is currently an ed tech in the district and has been working at the Crescent Park School. And we feel that he'd be a great candidate for this, and we're excited to recommend him to you for approval tonight. And he has received, or is in the process of receiving special certification, ability to take some courses and so on to continue with that effort, but that's not unusual, special education teachers today.
Would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to accept the superintendent's nomination of special ed teacher.
Any further discussion?
Not to do with this particular appointment, but while in this case, in every case, we have been able to browse quickly through an obviously well-qualified batch of people, if it ever became a question of whether we were entirely happy, we would need a little more time to consider this documentation prior to voting.
Now, a few years ago, the Personnel Committee actually went away from reviewing it ahead of time and saying that since the state law required that the superintendent make the recommendation, that they felt that just bring it to the board. But at any point in time, if the board, for whatever reason, wasn't comfortable with that, they could vote to not approve it, and then it would go back and it would be reconsidered and brought back a second time. Or the Personnel Committee could change, you know, the routine that they're using now, and go back to the way they used to do it, which was that we would typically bring paperwork to the Personnel Committee ahead of time and look at it that way. Yeah.
As I said, I didn't raise it in regard to any of these particular qualifications.
Yeah, we try to make sure we do screen those out so that we don't bring somebody that's, you know, an inferior candidate or something. But no, it's a good point, David, and it changed a couple of years ago, so.
Further discussion? All in favor? Number 8. See what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent's nomination of stipend positions. I'll let you run down.
Yeah, thank you. So I talked a little bit about the kinds of things that we do for teachers who need to be recertified. It's a local credentialing committee that actually reviews all of the ed tech and teacher plans for recertification. And there are 6 people on that committee, and every year they have to be, well, every time their term is up, they have to be appointed, or someone else has to be appointed. So Tara Ingraham is the past chair, and she's indicated an interest in coming back on. We think she'd be very important to continue to serve on that committee. Susan Gordon has also been on that committee, and she's an ed tech, so she kind of represents the ed tech side of things, and she's experienced. And Denise Keogh is a second grade teacher at the Woodstock School. She would be a new appointment this year. She's very interested in becoming a part of that committee. So we definitely would feel comfortable with all 3 of those people being recommended. And then another carryover from the old TIF grant was what is called a Tpeg Facilitator. And the Tpeg Facilitator is just somebody that works with the teachers in preparing their goals and so on for the year. And Gina Lavoie is at Crescent Park, and she would be doing the Crescent Park certificate. So she'd be the person responsible for providing that support for teachers as well. So that's another layer of support that we have for the classroom teachers, because each year teachers are required to submit goals to their administrators that line up with, the goals that they have professionally and also the goals in school and the district. And they get reviewed, and the facilitator helps them prepare those. And Gina's top shelf. So we recommend all 4 of those folks for, these are stipend appointments, which, here in case anybody was curious, the stipend is $820 a year for the folks that are on the credentialing committee. The chair gets $1,839, and then the facilitators, Tpeg facilitators, receive a $1,500 stipend, and those are all included in the budget when the budget is put together.
Anybody like to make a motion on the stipend positions?
I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's nominations of the stipend positions.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
So you're getting 3 little packets of papers. One is the application for the candidate that I'll be recommending tonight for curriculum director. The second one is a copy of her resume. And then the third is a draft job description that we'll be bringing to the Personnel Policy and Facilities Committee meeting at their next meeting to review. Once that is approved by the committee, it'll come back to the board for your approval. I would say let's start with that, just take a peek at that. These all went out to you earlier today, but again, I know that, as I said in my email, it was a little bit of 11th hour. We were coordinating things to try to get this out to people so it can get on the agenda for tonight. And if it hadn't been, it would have been the end of November, and that might have been too late to fill that position with this candidate. So we're very excited. Mr. Kenny, Ms. Arsenault, Mark's head just turned very quickly. That was impressive, Mark. Dr. Poston, who's an English teacher here and also a curriculum coordinator, and Michelle Danielson, who's a kindergarten teacher and past elementary curriculum coordinator, and I sat in on interviews for this committee, for this position. And I'm recommending Shelly Mogul. Shelly is currently employed by the City of Auburn School Department, and she comes to us with an incredible amount of experience. She's been in education for 25 years. She is the 2014 Curriculum Director of the Year. She's had lots of experience in many different ways. She comes highly regarded. I had a chance to speak to her former supervisors and her current supervisor. She is as good as they get. We're very, very fortunate to have somebody like this who's applied for this position. She comes with the ability to get a lot of different kinds of things done. If you had a chance to look at her paperwork, her background is great. She's a doer. I've had a chance to sit on a couple of committees with her over the years at the state level. She is one of these people who just takes the ball and she runs with it. So she is not adverse to taking on additional responsibilities, as you will see in that job description. It's pretty extensive. I will, if the Personnel Policy Facilities Committee approves it, obviously I'll also want to go over it with Shelly if you do support this tonight. But these are all things that she's had experience with. And so the question had been asked, like, what else can we bring to the table with, in addition to curriculum? And if you look through it, data. I think my building administrators will tell you that we don't have a lot of support in terms of data collection or data interpretation, and this is what she does on a regular basis. It'll be a huge help for us. She's also had experience doing support for certification. She's had background experience with gifted and talented and a variety of other different things in a much bigger school district. So she's excited about the possibility of coming to SAD 44. The way that the contract would be written up will be, it's a 2-year contract I'm proposing. It's $93,000 for year 1, but that would be prorated. So we would only be paying her from the time she came on board to the end of the year. We're anticipating that would be about $57,000. And then in year 2, the recommendation would be that she would come for that 93 plus 3%, which is 90, whatever it is. I have it in the memo. But, so, at this point, I would turn it over to Stephanie Erickson as chair of the Finance Negotiations Committee.
Yeah, the Negotiations Committee recommends approval for Shelly.
So that does not require a second. Is there any discussion, questions? Maggie?
I'd just like to disclose that I know Shelly very well, and she and I work together closely. She was a board member of a nonprofit where I was an executive director, and her heart, the only thing I would say, absolutely everything Dr. Murphy said, 100%, and add that her heart is for the students, and that her heart really is about creating access for those underserved students, and it's just, I think we would just be so lucky to have her. It's like having a Hall of Famer interested in our district, and so I just wanted to disclose that I know her.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you. It's a great situation for our district. I do need to collect all the packets back from the teachers and from Shelly. So if somebody could just kind of coordinate that, would be great. Appreciate it.
All right, number 10. See what action the board wishes to take regarding nomination of central office personnel for fiscal year 22 and 23. And the negotiations committee will have a recommendation for this as well.
The Negotiations Committee recommends approval.
So the negotiations committee has really worked hard on this. They've been a number of times looking at these 2 particular positions to try to get them up to par with where they should be based on Western Maine average and state average. We were currently in a position where Deb Martin, who was our business manager, potentially could have been in a role where she would be supervising staff that would be making more than she was. So technically, a business manager oversees food service, and Deb was instrumental. Deb is here, by the way. If you don't know Deb wave. So be careful what you say about Deb. So no, she's been fantastic. She came here, and she had been the deputy treasurer for Oxford County, right? And has been here now for 5 years, and has really proven herself to be tireless. She often goes home with a whole bundle of things under her arm, and I get emails from her at all hours of the evening saying she's taking care of this or she's taking care of that. So one of the things that we really wanted to do was to recognize the fact that if we have good people, we need to be sure that we're paying them in a way that is at least competitive. And so the Finance Committee and Negotiations Committee, combined committee, sat down and looked hard at these 2 positions in the central office. And currently, in FY20, Okay, so we're currently looking at FY '22, but in FY '20, the average salary for business managers in Western Maine was $77,500. We would have been just a little bit over $60,000 this year in terms of Deb's salary. And we just brought on a new food service director a year ago, and that person would be competitively paid to almost to that same amount. And then if we had filled the transportation maintenance position, that position would have come in at more than what the finance committee, business manager was made. So, spent a lot of time on this, the committee did spend a lot of time on this, and the recommendation is a 2-year contract, and first year, current year right now, retroactive back to July 1st would be $70,500, and then in year 2, and I don't have the paperwork right in front of me, $77,200, I think it is. And then because Ms. Gunderson is the HR, payroll, and does some secretarial work as well, there's really no other comparison to Robin. Robin's been in this district for over 40 years in the central office. She has done a multitude of different things. The payroll that she handles is in excess of $7.2 million. She does it all by herself. Many places have a department that does that, or they contract it out. So we felt the fairest way to look at that would be to take what the equivalent was for percentages with Deb's increase and just apply those percentages to Robin as well. So you have those figures in front of you too. I would tell you that considering we run this district right now with 3 people in the central office, and that's Deb, Robin, myself, we get it all done. We have a 3rd position that we had not filled when Ms. Hanscom moved down here. And the reason we hadn't filled it was because we knew we really needed to address this first. And so what we would hope to be able to do is this won't cost you any more money out of your budget. What we would do is we would reduce that 3rd position by whatever the cost was that we felt it would take to kind of bring these 2 people up to par. And then we would look at the possibility of hiring a part-time person with the money that was left in that budget and go that route, so that we could be sure that we have competitive salaries for people that have been doing a great job. And I want to thank the negotiations committee. They spent a lot of time on this, and this and the next item. So, thank you. That's the background for that.
Any discussion on that? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Number 11. See what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent's nomination of district administrators for fiscal year 22 and 23. Crescent Park School, Tanya Arsenal, Telstar Middle and High School, Mark Kenny, Telstar Middle School Dean of Students, Lindsay Lecce, Telstar High School Dean of Students, John Elliott. And the negotiations committee has a recommendation for that as well.
Negotiations recommends approval.
And so the negotiations committee looked at the amount of work and effort that the administrators have put in during COVID. It's been obviously a lot of work, a lot of evenings, a lot of extra contacts with parents and so on. We're so fortunate we have such a great administrative team. We should all recognize that, and the negotiations committee has. And they're looking at a 4% increase. And that sounds, people never like to spend money on administration, but I will tell you, when you have good administrators, you want to keep them. And we have a great administrative team right now, and they've done a wonderful job. The 4% basically comes out to be the equivalent of what the teachers, an average teacher would get this current year, because they got a 3% increase plus a step. And so that would be, approximately 4%. Some might be a little bit higher than 4%, some might be a little bit lower, but on average. So the negotiations committee felt that in this particular year, recognizing the efforts that are made by those people will be very important. We still will have a couple of individual contracts that are out there that we have to look at later on, which we have not gotten to yet, and we will. But right now, these are the building level administrators, and so the recommendation is 4% the first year. Second year, the negotiations committee wants to keep that open because they want to take a similar look at the administrative salaries, just to see where things stand, because right now we're kind of all over the place. So we have some that might be more in line with state average than others, and the committee has directed me to meet with those folks and begin that process of getting information to them so that they can make some recommendations to at the end of the year. So 4% and no other changes in benefits, retroactive to July 1st, then year 2 would be open, it'd be a 2-year contract.
Tammy?
I just had a question of why Woodstock and Jess Wilkie isn't part of this?
Jess is a teaching principal, so
Okay.
she gets a stipend, and
Okay.
that stipend actually had gone up this year too, so,
Okay.
yeah. We don't love her any less than we love her.
I'm just making
She's
sure of
here.
that.
She's here.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Thank you.
Number 12, see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of dividing the position of transportation maintenance supervisor into 2 separate positions on a 1-year interim basis, and negotiations committee has a recommendation.
Negotiations committee recommends approval.
So we had put this out, we had advertised for a replacement for Ron Deegan to do transportation and maintenance. And, you know, Ronnie is another example, I think, of a person we've had in the district who's done yeoman's work for us, and has done a really good job. We did not get any applications that had the kind of experience that we felt we needed to have in order to have somebody step in and do that dual position successfully. So in meeting with the negotiations committee, I made the recommendation that we look at doing an interim approach to that for the balance of this year. And Ron has agreed to stay on board and do oversight for maintenance. And those of you who've been on the board for a while know that he does an exceptional job with planning and overseeing like the different projects that we have going on and just the day-to-day maintenance of the buildings. So he's agreed to do that at a $35 an hour rate, which is very, very good, and no benefits. So he will be putting in whatever hours we feel he needs to be able to do with that. And then the other part of that recommendation was that Jim Whitman, who's currently the dispatcher and in many ways has been kind of like the number 2 anyway in the transportation department, will take over the transportation portion of that position at a salary of $50,000, prorated to when he started in that role a few weeks ago. And again, I did put him as like a temporary, pending any approval tonight. And then between the two, it should come out to be about the same as what we had budgeted for Ron's position. So again, I don't see that as being an additional expenditure to the budget, but rather just a reallocation of the financial ability we have within it to best meet the needs of the district. So Ron will oversee this. He'll submit a timesheet like Ed Techs do, whatever, just indicating the number of hours. If something goes wrong at night, if the burners go down, whatever, he'll still step up in and take care of all of that. He also has said that he'd be willing to help Jim Whitman just with day-to-day kinds of things. If questions come up that Jim might not have the answer to, Jim can call him. And so I think it's the best position that we have right now in order to ensure quality effort on both sides of that for the district for the balance of this year. And then we can look at it at the end of the year and say, okay, does this make sense? Is this a better way to look at it? Or do we want to go back up and continue to try to find one person who can do it all?
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Number 13, see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the superintendent's nomination of an hourly maintenance director for 2021-2022 school year, and negotiation committee has a recommendation.
Negotiations committee recommends approval.
And that's for Ron Deegan, at $35 an hour.
Any discussion? All in favor? And finally, number 14, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the superintendent's nomination of a transportation director, 2021-2022 school year. And Stephanie?
Negotiations committee recommends approval.
And again, it's Jim Whitman, and I've had a chance to meet with Jim fairly regularly since he's taken over in this role. And I talked to him as late as this afternoon, and he's doing a good job. You know, he knows the people, he knows the drivers, he knows the parents. He's also driving. So what's happening, just kind of expand on this a little bit, is we have a real challenge with bus drivers, as you all know. You know, we've had issues on a regular basis. I happened to overhear one earlier tonight that I know existed, and I know that sometimes we have to do double runs. Jim is going to continue to drive. That's something that Ron wasn't doing as much because he had to do maintenance and transportation. And we'll be looking at replacing Jim's position on a temporary 1-year basis as dispatcher, and with the hopes that we can find somebody who can come in and then take that role over and maybe also have the ability to drive a bus. So we're trying to do everything we can to get as many drivers as we can. And as you know, last year, the ASME contract, we increased substantially to try to help, you know, fund drivers to a better degree, and we're still having a hard time getting people. So anybody that you know that you think could be interested, please help spread the word. And in the meantime, we're looking at, you know, everything we can. We're even looking at the possibility of seeing if we can find a contracted provider that might be able to come in and pick up some of the smaller routes that we have, like the sports trips and so on. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Any discussion on the transportation director?
I just want to say that Jim does drive my child's route, and before he started kindergarten, he called me up and was like, we discussed, I live on kind of a bad corner, and we discussed where we should drop off and pick up, and he was excellent. He really, he's wonderful.
Thanks, Amy.
All in favor? Thank you. That is everything. Would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Don't watch, keep on getting a couple more.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thanks all.
Yeah, I assumed that.
That should have been.
This was more reminiscent.
Yes, I know, like, what, like,
Normal.